We're talking about using data to make our content stand out. And one of the most common ways that people think about using data is the analogy of red ocean and blue ocean. To another MarketMuse content strategy webinar in our MarketMuse content strategy webinar series. I'm Jeff Coyle. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer of MarketMuse. And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is, they say blue ocean content, but it's really using data to make your content stand out. So how can we integrate our own data that we create, data from our products, data from our services offerings, or data that we research into our calendars? And my guest here is infinitely qualified to have this discussion. I want to introduce the head of content from 2 Octobers. I'm so excited to have her. She has 15 or more years experience, both as an in-house and as an agency leader. Today really focuses on content for 2 Octobers for their clients. Yasmin Davila, how are you doing?
I'm great, Jeff. How are you doing? Glad to be here.
Fine. All right, cool. What's going on with you and how are you thinking about content strategy right now?
Yeah, so I was just talking to some of my coworkers about this, and it's funny. I always get the clients that come to me at the final hour saying, okay, I'm ready to do some content for Black Friday, and we're a week out. And so we're a little late to the boat on that. And so in those situations, it's really talking to them about starting to plan ahead for next year or for what's coming next, whether that's the next holiday, the next big thing in their marketing planner, their product release calendar. And then what are there things that we can do now in the interim? Obviously, creating new content, a little late to gain traction on that, but there are some things that we can do from an SEO perspective that could help. So things like maybe adjusting some of their titles and metas. Maybe they want to call out free shipping offers or other promotions that they're running around the holiday that can have more of an immediate impact versus trying to create an entirely new landing page. But starting to educate them on, why we do start planning these things quite well in advance, and typically why I like to plan a couple of months at least in advance when it comes to content calendars and content creation.
What an awesome way to get started with this discussion. We're talking about using data to make our content stand out. And one of the most common ways that people think about using data is the analogy of red ocean and blue ocean. Just in case anybody's not familiar with that who's on the discussion, how do you describe what a red ocean is, what a blue ocean is, and why that content resonates when you're trying to make a client differentiated?
Yeah, so I think with red ocean, this is really focusing more on the competition and trying to compete within the existing market and what's already there, versus a blue ocean strategy. You're really trying to create a new market, create new demand, be unique within the space. And I think it's an important concept, and I like to steer clients more towards the blue ocean strategy, because I think what happens is a lot of clients will tend to fixate on, how do I beat this competitor, or I want to rank number one. And they take a competitor-centric view versus looking at a customer-centric or brand-centric view, which I think is really how to be successful in content. Of course, there's a lot of insights and things we can garner from competitors that are ranked well or that are performing well. But in order to create successful content, you really need to start with who is your target audience and what are your goals as a business, and then using those as your foundation. And then naturally, you'll just build successful content because you are really starting with that premise of, okay, let me put myself in my shoes of my customers, and what do they want? What are they looking for out of this content? What are their pain points and questions? And then go from there.
And so if I'm going to be in a scenario where I've already assessed there is a lot of coverage of this, what do you say to somebody who can't figure it out how to differentiate? Maybe their historical content has been very derivative.
Yeah, exactly. I think that people really get fixated on I typed in the keyword and this is what showed up, and their fixation is on, okay, this piece is number one and this is what they did, so I'll just write that. And it's just basically everyone producing the exact same content. And so I really encourage clients to, if you're just position yourself again as your target audience. And if you're doing a search, are you looking for more of the same? If you're looking at this piece of content, is that really addressing everything that you want? And so It's really requires that extra effort and the extra mile of going and doing some research as to what are those FAQs. And a lot of clients will say, I don't really know where to start. I'm not sure how do I know what my customers are looking for? I don't know anything about SEO, for example, or where to start looking. A lot of times internally, you have those tools readily accessible. So for example, with retailers, go to your customer service or call center agents. What kinds of questions are they getting on a regular basis that maybe your product page isn't converting the way you want because you're not addressing some of the things that customers are looking to know. And so they're having to go to all these different places to find that information versus finding it on your site. So that's one example. Also looking at, again, really digging into who your target audience is, what those personas look like. Your marketing teams will have a lot of that information available. Go take a look at that and see what types of things are those people looking for, depending on what life stage they're at, where they may be physically or otherwise, and like what they're trying to accomplish. And so I think it's just layering in that additional piece of the customer data versus just focusing on the keyword and the search volume and just replicating what the competition is.
So I love that. And you were talking about quality and how do you appeal to emotions and customer research while building out different types of content that will be very unique, where no one else can replicate if we do it this way.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to be just kicked with this. Somebody can't just put out an identical version of this, which is my definition of blue ocean.
So again, I really try to focus and hone in on what those customer pain points, or not always necessarily pain points, but what is important to them when they are, what are they trying to get out of this content? But if it's a purchase, what are they looking for to help them to reach that level of conversion and making sure that we're calling that out. So for example, with this furniture client, rather than just saying on the product page, white sectional sofa, $1,000 or whatever. Okay, great. But as a customer, I want to visualize what that looks like in my home. Okay, you're telling me the length. I don't know what that means in relation to what. Maybe putting, for example, a blog post that showcases the furniture in someone's home so I can see what it looks like. What type of style? Describe it to me. Is it mid-century modern? Like, start painting that picture for the customer of things that are important. So they want to know what type of style it is. Is it going to go with their decor? Describe to me the furniture, make me feel like I can visualize myself sitting on it. It's a plush, deep seat couch, perfect for movie watching or whatever the case is. Just a little bit more, like you said, painting that narrative, because by the time someone gets done reading that and looking at all of the associated content, you want them to be like, yes, I need this sofa, or whatever it is that you're selling or trying to convey.
That's such a great example. So let's change the gears a little bit to, you talked about data, you talked about some data sources, manual research, some third-party side. How do you make decisions or kind of interview a team about what data to use, what types of data will be easy to get at, what types of processes would you employ for someone who says, like, I just use, my brain and maybe, this SEO tool that everyone else uses that provides sort descend by search volume. I don't really know what else to do. How do I get started with this? And what would be like the killer's dozen here for data sets to see if somebody has access to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that I definitely get a lot. Content production and content strategy can be very overwhelming in terms of where to start. And so I like to break it down into sort of two buckets for folks, which is, let's look at the short-term, more quote unquote quick wins, and then the longer term strategy. And I think people think they're not sure what tools they need, or they need a lot of fancy tools. And a lot of these tools are helpful, but there's some things that you already have readily available that can help. So for example, for the quick wins or short-term strategy, I love Search Console data. That's a place where you can go and take a look at ways that you can do some easy optimization implementations. You can see how your pages are showing up. So look at which pages are getting a lot of impressions, and maybe they're ranking well, but maybe the click-through rate just isn't there. Why is that? Maybe you just need to tweak your title and meta description because people don't find it compelling and they just don't feel the need to click through. Kind of reassess that. Maybe you haven't refreshed it in a couple of years because it's a product that's been live for a long time and you forgot about it. So I think that's a really important one to call out, is that a lot of people will think, oh, I'm just going to throw new content at the problem, so to speak, if they feel like maybe their rankings are down or they're trying to improve SEO traffic or anything like that. But a lot of times it is just conducting a content audit and seeing what sorts of assets that you already have. So looking at that Search Console data, your Google Analytics data, what's performing, what's not performing. If you have content that's maybe showing on the cusp of ranking, maybe it's like on page 2, but it just needs a little love. Maybe it just needs some extra content on there. Maybe you need to go look at what your consumers care about and add a section of content for that, or just refresh it if you've got some outdated statistics or anything like that. So I love looking at that sort of under the hood to see where to start. And then for longer term strategy, it's going back to the things that we talked about and reaching out to internal teams, again, to see what sorts of questions are out there, using some tools. There's a lot of SEO tools available that give you a sense of what are those. People also ask questions or FAQs that are really common. Things like Google Trends, which is a free tool that you can see what types of topics are trending related to a particular subject. So that can give you some direction. Again, aligning it with whatever your business goals are and your overall marketing calendar, but it can give you some more direction in terms of what you should be focusing on in the long run.
No, that's great. And not only for the obvious reasons that you just basically described the value proposition of MarketMuse, but other than that, I always love when the answer to that question is that.
Yeah,
but
you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. So really identifying what to create, what to update, using more data than just maybe third party or search volume, but also then trying to figure out internally what other things could really make us stand out. So it's like pairing the best and the best. Is the way that I interpret what you said. We've talked about an e-commerce example of building content around a buyer journey to make it unique. But I'd say in that scenario, that was more aligned to our journey, our customer research. In a furniture example or in a similar one, how do you make that furniture content more data-driven or make it stand out? And so nobody else could produce it. XYZ furniture, I've got the sofa, it's $1,000. I can speak best about my furniture quality. So what aspects of that it truly then become non-replicable? That's a little bit tougher in e-commerce.
It is. And I think again, it goes back to looking at a lot of the tools and the strategies that we've talked about, because what I've found a lot of times with e-commerce or retailers is that the copy or the content tends to be it can be pretty generic. And so you want to avoid doing that because again, it's just creating more of the same. Like there's so many in the furniture examples, there's a lot of furniture and there's a lot of people that sell sofas. But again, it's painting that picture for the customer. It is calling out, for example, doing that research on how people are talking about your brand. If they're saying, oh, I love this couch because of the cushions are really comfortable, call that out on your product page. Like pick a couple of call out points that resonate with people or that you think might resonate and then highlight those. Because you want to avoid having that copy be really generic. Another furniture company in the sea of furniture stores out there. So just trying to be really specific to your brand. And again, you can go back to who you are as a brand. What's your overall unique value proposition and trying to tie that into your copy and the message that you're portraying across all of your content as well.
All right. So right now, you mentioned earlier, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but I want to talk about what's happening right now, content calendars. Can you walk through how you shore up content calendars in Q4 for companies? What's your process? What do you think about? What's it look like? And how can people who haven't really gotten into that best practice in Q4 tune their fork for that?
Yeah, so I think, again, a great starting point is to go back, take a look at what your overall business goals are for the upcoming quarter, for the upcoming year, because anything that you're doing with content, ideally, you want to align to those overarching business goals. So always start there. And I think the next piece, what I always like to look at is, what does your marketing calendar look like? Are there product launches or other emphases that you're going to have throughout the year? And how can you start planning out content that's going to support those things? I think it's just great to have that sort of synergy and again, cross-channel collaboration. So using those as a starting point and then taking a look at if you've been working through content or you have existing content, again, taking a look at what's performing well, what's not performing well, where are there gaps still that you need to fill in? We were talking a little bit about competitive analysis. I think a lot of times people get into the sort of set it and forget it mentality with content, but revisiting that to see, okay, great, how is this performing? Are there still things that I'm missing here? Why are these other 5 sites still outranking me? Oh, it's because they're talking about this. I need to create a page about this, or I need to create this. Really taking a look at that and assessing where those opportunities lie. And then, like I said, I always like to map it out at least a couple of months in advance and plan for. A lot of people say, I don't have a lot of time, or if you're the sort of sole person writing all the content, if you can just do one topic a month, hey, that's better than nothing a month. So I always try to get at least a couple, but do what you can, because something is always better than nothing. And again, you can focus on those quick wins, but in terms of new content production, I always aim to do at least a couple pages per month at a minimum, depending on, of course, if you have a lot of resources, you can crank out a lot more content than that. But planning that out for a few months ahead of time, at least, so that you've got a plan and a strategy for the upcoming. But again, just really making sure that you're lining up to your overarching business goals and what the need is there.
Wonderful. This has been such a cool conversation.
Yes.
You truly illustrate that you know how to do this. And I love when you're describing those research processes. It's very practical and very effective. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. This is great.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Thank you.